Hello, everybody. We are very fortunate to have with us today Professor Itzik Ben Israel. He's a Major General of the Reserve Forces of the IDF. He is the head of the ICRC at the Tel Aviv University, Interdisciplinary Cyber Research Center at the Tel Aviv University, who's also conducting the Cyber Week, one of the biggest events outside of the United States in the field of cybersecurity. People from over 100 countries arrive at Israel every year to participate in this event. Professor Ben Israel has a long history of amazing achievements. Too many to note here, but you can just go to his Wikipedia page and see how many amazing things he have done. So we are very, very fortunate to have him with us today. Hi, Professor Ben Israel.
Good morning.
So we're going to talk today about cybersecurity and fake news, especially in light of the war that we are currently having in Israel. Maybe you can start by just giving us the basics of this war. Who should we be afraid of when we're talking about cybersecurity and fake news? Which country or entities, state-sponsored attackers, have the power to cause real damage in the cyberspace?
Well, when we speak about cyberspace activity, operations, we can speak about very different fields in which cyber is applicable. One which is perhaps causing the more damage than others is cyber attack against critical infrastructure. You do this by attacking with cyber technology computers that control certain infrastructures like power supply, water supply, etc. Second, an entirely different field is using cyberspace for spying, for getting information. You hack into a computer or iPhone, which, as we know, by mistake we call it a phone. More accurate is smartphone. Smart indicates there is a computer chip inside for gathering information. Another field, entirely different again, is what we call influence or using cyber networks like social networks, internet, etc., not for the two purposes I've mentioned, but for influencing people, change their opinions, starting with trying to influence them whom to vote for. We all remember the intervention of
Russians
in the elections of former elections of President Trump, and also during wars you can use it in order to influence the opinion of the certain communities by showing certain videos, fake ones, what we call the deep fake, if it is video, etc. Now, fortunately, in this war that we have now with the Hamas, all the three other fields, there is a fourth one which I mentioned. This is securing yourself against those three threats. Okay. Fortunately, we have very good. I mean, the state of Israel have very good cyber security, securing ourselves, and therefore the only field which played a real role in the current war is the last one, the influence, because no one can stop certain fake news to spread over the network, especially if it's not under our control. It can be done all over the world. And this is the main area. Who is doing it? To a certain extent, but very little, the Hamas try to do it, but usually failed. They don't have much capability. The main one, of course, is Iran. And there are a lot of fake news spread by Iranian groups, hackers, or sometimes hackers all over the world which has some sympathy for for the Hamas, and many times not even for the Hamas, but Palestinians, or many times not even the Palestinians, but Muslims, because there is some interpretation of the war between us and the Hamas as a war between the Jews and the Muslims, which is much general, of course, from what is happening today.
So maybe you can explain to me, because something very interesting happening now. In past conflicts, whenever the level of conflict between Israel and other entities, usually the Palestinians, went up, we would usually witness a huge number of events of cyber attacks happening against companies, against people. We've seen data leakage. We've seen a lot of defacements of websites. I would expect that during the current war, which it's a much bigger conflict compared to other conflicts, we would see even more active cyber space activities. So we would see more attacks going on. We would see more companies getting hacked. We would see more data getting leaked. But for some reason, it seems like most of the focus of the attackers right now is on fake news and not attacking organizations. Can you explain that maybe?
Yeah, I think this is also a lesson we learned during the war between Ukraine and Russia. It's let's say let's speak, for example, about attacking critical infrastructure. Okay, perhaps those who would like to help the Hamas could help them by, for example, shutting off the electricity here in Israel. But as I said before, Israel is very much prepared for this. It's not that it cannot happen. It may happen if we will not do the right things, but we have very sophisticated protection system, which we started 2002. That is, we are now more than 20 years old in this activity. And during war is, if you didn't prepare it before, it's very difficult to
implement
it during the war.
Yeah.
You need a lot of intelligence, information. It's a long process. You have to hack into the computer, check what is you have to attack the right computers, the right network, or central points in this network. And it's very difficult to do it in real time. You need a lot of time to prepare for it. We saw the same, by the way, in the war between Ukraine and Russia. There were significant attacks in the first 2 days, and then no one is hearing about it unless we talk again about influence, social networks, fake news, etc. Spying, I guess, is something that is continuing, but as usual, even if you find it, it's not open to communication. It's not published, by everyone, etc. And so the last activity which we do witness is that of influence.
Okay, so when talking about influence, and we see huge amount of fake news on the media, sadly, some of which we create internally because of miscommunication, because of misconception. Something very interesting happening in those cases where you see fake news, where sometimes the Hamas or someone who supports the Hamas try to make the Hamas look very big and the Palestinians very, very strong. On the other hand, you see at the same time posts that try to portray the Hamas and the Palestinians as poor and they should get a lot of sympathy. So this duality is very interesting. What are they trying to achieve when they portray themselves as very, very strong, and when they do that as they portray themselves as very, very weak?
Okay, I would say something like this. The ratio in the battlefield now between the power of IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, and the Hamas is not working for the Hamas. Okay, I mean, we are much stronger. Much, when I say much, I mean 100 times more than the Hamas. So what could be the goal of the Hamas using it? The only goal effective goal that I can think about is changing the opinion in Western world, because Israel is not too much influenced by non-Western world, especially in the US, but Western Europe as well, in order to create pressure on the governments not to support Israel. Let me remind us that it started, this current war started by a terrible massacre of civilians. I mean, in the first few hours of the operation, Hamas killed something like 1,300 civilians, set entire houses, including the families, in fire. And therefore, Western world, and especially Western governments, almost intuitively stood supporting Israel. Okay, the goal of this influence operations by the Hamas is to change the mind. In order to do this, they do two things, I would say. One is using fake news and a lot of real video clips that you see that are dispersed by the Hamas are real ones that are taken from, for example, the war in Syria. Okay, not at all related to what is happening today between us and them. And the second thing is to blur, to confuse people, okay, that are not very much informed about what is happening, confuse the distinction between Hamas and the Palestinians. The Palestinians, in a way, are a victim here. And let me remind you that Hamas was not elected by the Palestinians in Gaza to rule them. There were elections in 2006. Abu Mazen and the Palestinian Authority won the elections, and the Hamas took power by force there, killing the representatives of the Palestinian Authority, and it's a terrorist organization. There is no. I mean, these are two different issues. When we fight today, we fight not against the Palestinians in Gaza, but against the Hamas in Gaza. And if you watch all these viral videos in the social networks, etc., they have these two goals: changing the opinion and blurring the distinction between Hamas and Palestinians.
So this is very interesting. It seems like internally here in Israel, when we talk about our PR, our public relations as a country, it seems like we always say that Israel is not very good at explaining the situation. We're not very good at communicating the situation. And traditionally, it seems like the Palestinians are better at getting sympathy and empathy from other countries. And it seems like it's because of the Israeli narrative versus the Palestinian narrative, where the Palestinian narrative is a narrative of weakness. We are poor, we are being killed, our children are suffering, and the Israeli narrative is a narrative of power. This is the cyber center of the world. We are strong. We have the strongest army in the area. So it just makes sense that it would be easier for people to be more connected to the poor and the weakest. Just the natural human tendency to sympathize with the weakest. But during this war, it seems like we got a lot of support because of probably what happened during the 7th of October.
This is why I said one of the goals of the cyber activity in the networks of the other side is to blur this distinction between Palestinians and Hamas. Everything you said about the Palestinians, I agree with. Okay, they are a victim in a way. Okay, but this doesn't apply to the Hamas. This is a very cruel terrorist organization. There is also a cultural problem here, which you may call a disadvantage from the point of view of Israel. Okay, we have terrifying videos taken by Hamas murderers from the first few hours. Okay, babies killed, slaughtered, things terrible. I mean, Jewish tradition doesn't allow us to show them openly in the TV. What we do instead is going with those films, those videos to President Biden, Secretary Blinken, Prime Minister of Britain, etc., etc. We go, show them, and they all see it, and there is no question anymore. But Jewish tradition doesn't allow us to put it openly in the TV because we think it's not respecting the deads. This is a tradition, okay? We need the agreement of the families, and they don't give the agreement, and therefore there is some inherent disadvantage here in this type of war, and still, but it doesn't prevent us from showing this evidence to leaders. Therefore, there is a support of the leaders. They all distinguish. They know Hamas is not Palestinians. I mean, they are the Palestinian people, but different entity. They are a murderous organization. Like we had the same with ISIS. I mean, okay, a lot of people supported Muslims all over the world, but not ISIS. Okay, ISIS, and therefore, once the world realized ISIS is very cruel organization, the whole world. This is the first time in history after Second World War, in which the whole world, West, East, Russia, the US, Turkey, Iran, everyone were part of the coalition that at the end of the day annihilated ISIS. Same should happen with the Hamas, not the Palestinians. It's very important to
differentiate between
them.
Yeah. Okay. So, obviously, the Hamas and the Palestinians and everybody who's pro-Palestinians understands that fighting the war on social media, fighting the war on the news is very, very important. It's not just the war on the ground, it's also the war on the news. Because to some extent, we could win the war on the ground and lose the war on public opinion, and then it seems like we might have created more damage than do good. What should Israel do in order to fight the current efforts that the Palestinians or pro-Palestinians entities do in order to promote the Palestinians' narrative?
Okay, well, I said we must differentiate clearly between Palestinians and Hamas. Same goes for day after the war. Okay, we need to solve the conflict between Israel and Palestinians. This is a leftover problem. I mean, the first time in which Jewish people living between Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea and Arab people, first time since they started to shoot each other was 1920. It's more than 100 years ago. Okay, and then when Israel was declaring independence, and we face another problem, and it's not between us and the Palestinians, but between us and the neighboring countries, which were much bigger threat. So we, in the last 75 years since independence, we devoted most of our capabilities, including cyber, by the way, with a reference to states in the Middle East, hostile states. But this problem is, I wouldn't say not existing anymore, but much less threatening than it was 75 years ago. Few states like Iran that we mentioned are still doing it. And we didn't pay too much attention to the fact that we were left with the issue of the conflict between us and the Palestinians. And if you ask me, we need to go from the point of view of the government policy, etc. We need to change our conceptions and do something actively in order to try to solve this issue.
So one last question on that before we will go back to social media and fake news, and we will touch artificial intelligence in a second. There is a disadvantage. I agree with everything you said, obviously, and I think we should differentiate between the Hamas and Palestinians. But there is a big disadvantage in doing that, and I want to hear what is your opinion on how you should settle this problem. The more you differentiate between the two, the more people will ask, so why are Palestinians currently getting killed in Gaza and not the Hamas? So we hear about a lot of casualties from the Palestinian side. And as you said, they are the victim of this situation. So how would you settle those kind of things?
No, we don't bomb or do anything against Palestinians. We do a lot of things against Palestinians that belong to the Hamas. But this is Hamas, not Palestinians. And as I said, we have, perhaps it's not so self-evident from the pictures dispersed in this social network, but we have to draw the line.
Okay, so going back to fake news and social networks, it seems like with today's artificial intelligence advancements and artificial intelligence tools, it becomes easier and easier for people to create fake news in very, very high quality. And 3 years from now, 5 years from now, it would be impossible to differentiate between a real video and a computer-generated video. So fake news will become a much bigger problem. How do you see the future of fake news, especially in light of artificial intelligence advancements? And what do you think we should do in order to try and mitigate some of those threats?
We don't have to wait 3 or 4 years. You can see even today certain examples. Okay, we had the speech of Nasrallah, the leader of the Hezbollah. I saw it in many languages, even Portuguese. I mean, Nasrallah is talking in Portuguese and you cannot distinguish. Fluent. Or things like this. It happens today. This is the bad news. The good news is this is done by computer algorithms, and therefore, in principle, you can distinguish between a fake one and a real one. I mean, it is designed to deceive human cognition. Okay, you can deceive me by growing beard, for example. Okay, for human mind, it's enough. If not, you had sunglasses or something like this. But it's very difficult to deceive a machine that is doing to identify faces, because it's based on algorithms. And if you know what are the basics of AI algorithms, you can design certain operations against this algorithm that will distinguish between fake one and real one. Okay, so my opinion, it's, by the way, we started working on this in the Cyber Center of Tel Aviv University perhaps 10 years ago, when you were still a member of this center, on trying to find automatically by the machine, trying to check if something that you release to the social network is real or not. Imagine yourself, there is like traffic. On the side of everything, there will be 3 colors. Red means high probability of being fake, green, very small probability of being fake, and orange for not so clear, okay, something like that. It can be done in principle. It was not an interest of anyone to spend time on designing and building such algorithms, but in principle it can be done. It's very difficult to imagine and even normal activity. It's not only about times of war, but let's say I sell you something, I want you to do any activity. If we will not have good algorithms to distinguish between fake and real ones, we will be in big trouble.
So definitely, we already saw during this war a lot of fake news, videos of the Hamas using highly sophisticated military tools to attack Israel, but apparently all of those videos were taken from a computer game. And honestly, I saw those videos. It's very, very hard to know that those are not real videos. It seems like absolutely real. So yeah, technology allows them to create better and better fake news, but you believe that it's going to be okay because we will be able to fight this technology with anti deep fakes, anti fake news technology, right? So that's amazing. Let me ask you, maybe we're getting to the end of this episode, about Israel and Israel's activities in the cyberspace. Um, Obviously, Israel is a cyber power. We know that Israel is very good in offensive activities, so Israel is using cyber on a regular basis. Do you imagine Israel is using cyber tools during this war, and if so, in what way?
Yeah, but not directly against the Hamas, because the Hamas is not dependent too much on technology. For example, of course, they use internet, something like that. You can use cyber tools to block it. You can cut the system. I mean, I guess that there is no internet today used by the Hamas because we did something physical to the infrastructure of the internet in Gaza. Not so much, as I said, against the Hamas, but against its allies, like, for example, Iran and Hezbollah. We don't have an interest to enlarge the current hostilities beyond the borders of Gaza, but in case we will something will happen, I guess we will use those capabilities as well.
So, just my last question for today about not necessarily about technology, but about the future of this war. Um, what's going to happen? We know this is such a terrible situation, and we know that probably this war is going to last at least a month, if not more than a month. How do you see this situation move forward? What's going to happen next?
From the military point of view, or
From the entire conflict?
Entire conflict. As I said, from a military point of view, we have the immediate objective is to get rid of the Hamas warriors, Hamas rule government in a way, and getting back all those kidnapped civilians that were taken by a few hundreds of them were taken by the Hamas in the first few hours. Then we have another secondary mission of stopping the launch of rockets against our population. This we are very close to achieve, because once we get hold of the area, you don't need to go to the tunnels, okay? Then they will not have a capability to launch rockets against us. And then we will have to face the big issues, the very more difficult issues. Let's say after the Hamas, who will rule Gaza Strip? Probably, perhaps the Palestinian Authority, or at the beginning some international something like this. And this is not sufficient. We need to find a way to solve, not perhaps not in one hit and one blow, and that's the end of it, but slowly even. But we need to define the process that at the end of it will solve the conflict between us and the Palestinians, not murderous terrorist organizations like the Hamas, but the Palestinian as a people.
So I know I said it was the last question, but just I want to ask you maybe to give recommendations to everybody that hears us right now, because we know that in fake news, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And we know that we have mainly fake news because people share and people click and people do that. Maybe you want to say something to people how we can, on a personal level, fight fake news and help to eradicate this problem.
Well, as you know, personally, whenever I see something and I suspect it's not true, there are ways, it's time consuming, but there are ways to check, to Google, to cross it with other evidence. As I said, the more sophisticated the fake evidence becomes, it's more difficult, and therefore we should continue do what we few years ago we started to do, and that is make it automatically. I mean, develop the algorithms that will help us to distinguish between fake news and real ones.
Okay, amazing. Professor Menny Barzilay, thank you so much for your amazing insights and your broad view on everybody and everything that's going on right now. I think everything that you said was making me smarter. So thank you so much for that. I want to thank all the people who were part of the production of this podcast. So thank you for your help and everything that you do. Our hearts with the people who were kidnapped by the Hamas and currently being held in Gaza. We hope that they will come home very, very soon. Thank you so much and see you in the next episode.